It's a common saying that humanity's capacity for kindness knows no bounds, and that saying would be true. After all of us have the capability to do a little good at least once a day. The smallest bit of kindness that you show can change a person's life at the end of the day, and many will definitely remember your efforts. Today, we will be covering such a story, which will prove that doing good is as simple as wanting to do so, with the hope that it will inspire all of you to do the same for those around you. Greetings, salutations, and welcome to our channel. Today we're going to talk about a store owner that successfully inspired those in need and paved the path to success for them. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to be rich of more amazing stories like this, as you will be notified when we upload new videos onto our channel. You can ensure that you will not be missing any of our uploads by clicking on the bell icon. Make sure you don't miss out. Our story begins many years ago, in a small town where everybody knew each other intimately. On one fateful day that seemed as regular as any, a young man named David went to a nearby store to purchase groceries. It was around the evening, and since the shop was a bit on the small scale, all the customers could be seen with one simple glance from any corner of the shop. There weren't many people inside the shop to begin with, and those who were there took what they needed and went about their lives. Everything seemed regular to David, until his eyes noticed a little boy, who was very thin and dressed in old clothes. What caught David's attention was the fact that this little boy didn't buy anything from the shop. Instead, he was just standing there, staring at a particular chocolate bar with hungry eyes. It didn't take long for David to realize that the boy was craving the bar of chocolate, but he simply couldn't afford it. David had already bought his groceries as he was about to exit the shop. Before he left, however, he decided to check the chocolate bar for its price. He realized that it wasn't that expensive, and he even felt like buying it for the poor boy to make his day. David almost bought the chocolate bar for the young boy, but as he took it to the register, he noticed that Mr. Miller, the owner of the store, was having a conversation with the boy. To this day, David claims that he will never forget the conversation that unveiled in front of his eyes that day. Mr. Miller first greeted the boy, before asking how him and his mother are doing. Even though it was obvious to the passing eye that the boy was growing up in a poor family, the boy still conducted himself in a friendly manner and responded in the friendliest way possible. "Hello, Mr. Miller, I'm doing well, and my mother is feeling better. I just decided to go in and see what you have. There's a chocolate bar there, and it's so beautiful," the boy replied back to him, admiration gushing from his voice. Mr. Miller smiled as he agreed with the boy that the chocolate bar really was beautiful. He asked the boy if he could help him somehow. The boy simply shook his head and said that he was just admiring the chocolate, and that's it. David was listening in on this conversation from the side of the counter, intrigued beyond all else, as he was interested in seeing how the store owner would handle the situation. A few moments later, Mr. Miller turned and noticed David as he was holding the chocolate bar that the boy was admiring. He put two and two together and figured out that David was planning to buy the chocolate bar for the boy. Mr. Miller simply smiled and winked at David, letting him know that there's no need for David to buy the chocolate bar for the poor boy. David watched as Mr. Miller continued his conversation with the boy, as he asked the boy if he wanted to buy the chocolate bar that he was admiring so much. The boy, whose name was Harry, simply meekly responded with, "No sir, thanks. I'm sure it's very tasty, but I don't have the money for it." David thought the conversation was going to end there, but he was taken by surprise with what happened next. The store owner smiled at Harry and spoke to him. "So Harry, maybe you have something that you can sell, or maybe exchange. Sometimes children sell their glass balls, and I give them all sorts of sweets for that." Mr. Miller claimed so enthusiastically. As soon as Harry heard those words, he began to smile. He quickly fished into his pocket as he pulled out a blue glass ball. Harry grinned as he spoke to the shop owner. "I also have a glass ball. Unfortunately, I only have one." Mr. Miller looked interested as he asked for the ball to take a closer look. After a while, Mr. Miller smiled and said that the ball was very beautiful, but sadly, he was looking for a red glass ball. He inquired Harry if he had a red glass ball at home, and without even hesitating, Harry replied enthusiastically that he indeed does. The store owner returns the blue glass ball to Harry and told him to take the chocolate home, under the promise that the next time he's in the neighborhood, he asked Harry to bring the red ball. Harry's happiness was overflowing when he heard the news. Harry was even polite enough to ask if Mr. Miller was absolutely sure, and when he reaffirmed that it is indeed fine, Harry happily made his way home with the chocolate. David was so mesmerized by what just happened in front of him that he didn't notice Mrs. Miller standing by his side as she watched what was taking place alongside him. Noticing the interest David showed in what just occurred, Mrs. Miller couldn't help but smile. She turned to David and enlightened him on something that he didn't know. There are 2 other poor boys in our town, whose parents unfortunately cannot afford to buy them sweets. My husband and I feel very bad for them. They don't even have money for food. So, my husband loves to trade with them. He gives them chocolate, candy, fruits, and other things in exchange for glass balls. However, the most interesting part of the story is that Mr. Miller will always claim that he didn't like the color of the ball that they were providing, and he would always ask them to bring another when they come again. He does this every single time the kids offer him glass balls, never truly accepting anything from them, but he always ensures to send them back home with a whole bag of groceries. It should be very clear by now that he never truly wanted anything from the boys, but he still made the boys feel like they did an honest exchange every single time. David found himself inspired by what he just learnt, and he never forgot this moment for the rest of his life. However, our story does not end there. As time passed, David grew up and found himself moving out of the small town. He relocated to Montana. No matter how many years passed by, David always remembered the situation that occurred in the store all those years ago. David returned to his hometown almost 20 whole years later. He was all grown up by now. A few days after he arrived, he got the urge to visit the same store that inspired him all those years ago, to see how things are now, and hopefully see Mr. Miller again. However, he was saddened to find that a young man was by the cash register instead. He was informed that Mr. Miller died recently, and his funeral happened to be on the very same day. David decided to attend the funeral to pay his respects and say goodbye one last time. As he watched the ceremony from the side, he saw 3 handsome young men, well dressed and with trendy hairstyles. They were all wearing dark suits and iron shirts. The young men all approached Mrs. Miller and offered their condolences. Then, they approached the coffin of Mr. Miller, barely holding their tears in as they touched his cold hand. As people were leaving the funeral, David decided to approach Mrs. Miller and offer his condolences. He stated that he never forgot what happened between Harry and Mr. Miller on that fateful day at the store, almost 2 decades ago. Mrs. Miller's face suddenly changed as she smiled. She led David to her late husband's grave as she let David in on something he never expected. Those 3 well-dressed young men were the 3 poor boys from the neighborhood that her husband used to help. Even though they barely managed to find food back in the day, now each of them owns a highly successful business. Even with all that success, they never forgot Mr. Miller and all the care and love he has shown them. Now that Mr. Miller can no longer change his mind about the color of the glass balls, the 3 men came to finally pay off their debt. David initially did not understand what all this meant, but all was clear to him when Mrs. Miller led David closer to the grave. David noticed the 3 beautiful red glass balls resting on top of the grave. David could not help but feel emotional at the gesture, as it was a form of kindness and respect that he has never seen in his lifetime. Mrs. Miller stated that the 3 men took on Mr. Miller's teachings, and they make sure that they pass on the good spirit by helping those in need whenever they can. We should all strive to be like Mr. Miller, and maybe we'll grow up creating a chain of kindness and positivity that will one day embrace the entire world. We finally reached the conclusion of Mr. Miller's inspirational tale. For more heartwarming stories just like this, subscribe to our channel and press that bell button to get an update every single time we upload a new video. Make sure to like this video and share it with somebody. Thank you for watching, and see you all next time.